So I'm having a chat with Jamie of the Swingles. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on.
Good, yeah, not a problem. So firstly, you're releasing a couple of new singles this month, the first of which is the Michael Jackson classic Man in the Mirror, and later on this month, Time After Time. Tell us a little bit about why you chose these couple of tracks to release as singles.
Well, this is something we always try with the Swingles. It's no pressure, certainly with the Jackson performing the King of Pop, but we always come at all of our a cappella singing with any track that we have loved and has had such a massive impact on our history as musicians. We thought, well, we've got to give it a go. We've performed this with the amazing guys from Varde before, and we thought, yes, this is the one to create. So this actually closes off a project that we've had running for some time now. This is the fourth and fifth track of our five individual releases, and we're really excited about them because we absolutely love them.
Good. And obviously the main thing about yourselves is a cappella versions of some big classic tracks. How do you choose the tracks that you do a cappella versions of?
It's an ongoing process, really. So some of your listeners may have heard of the Swingle Singers back in the 60s. The group has been going ever since then as this unbroken line of singers. And one thing that has really remained true, regardless of the style we sing, regardless of the music specifically, is that we should always be looking to approach a piece of music in the Swingle style. So, that early on was looking at the Bach and some classical stuff, whereas now, obviously, we've moved into pop and jazz and folk music and that kind of thing. So what we're looking for is a piece of music, if we're not writing our original music, which we do, is a piece of music that we really care about, and we think, you know what, actually, with our seven voices and in some cases, with collaborators, do we feel this can be something really exciting that we can put our own stamp on and make our own? Obviously, slightly terrifying in the case of singing Michael Jackson, but I think we've done a lot of work on it, and we absolutely love the result.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on this band formed back in the 60s. What's it like when a member joins or leaves? How much of an impact does that have on the group, if at all?
Well, a big one, really, because one of the main things we're constantly doing is when someone new does come in, you have to say, well, with this person's experience and abilities, how do we make them part of the Swingle sound? It's not, does this person fit? Everyone we sing with, we work with some really amazing singers, but it's how do we take their experience and ability and turn it into something that is part of that journey? Early on, it was very much jazz singers in France, looking at Bach and that kind of classical music and scatting it. They were jazz singers. Now we've got this wonderful melting pot of skills in the group. I trained as a classical singer to begin with. I was in the opera world before moving over. Some people sing musical theatre, some of them sing jazz. It's a real mix. So while it is hugely impactful when we lose someone because they become such a part of the DNA of the group, the exciting thing is, okay, well, this next person, what's the next evolution of the group?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're writing a track, or once you've picked a track to do an a cappella version of, how does it work for you guys from the start? How does it build up to the finished track?
It's always a collaborative process within the group. We have members of the group that are really accomplished arrangers. That means they will listen to a track and say, right, I'm going to write out 7 parts all the way through, everything from the drums to all of the upper voices, lower voices. And we'll take that into the rehearsal. We'll learn it and we'll start and say, okay, what's working, what's not? And it's always that process of tweaking and changing things and revoicing some of the chords and harmony, getting really very nerdy about it, I'll admit, until we find something that we can say, yes, this is the Swingles, this is our sound, this is what we do. So it's a very collaborative and constantly evolving process. We've had music that we sing or has been sung in the group for over a decade, many years now, that we might say, hey, why don't we try this? Let's see if this works. That's never off the table. Nothing is ever finished.
Yeah. And have any tracks that you've decided to do your own versions of simply not worked and you've had to bin it off, and why was that?
Oh, brutal question. To be honest, I would say no, but then I'm biased, aren't I? I think there's obviously the pieces that become more popular or less popular, but I think one thing that is a real must when we are releasing music is, and it's the benchmark that we hold our music against is this something we are proud of putting out? And if the answer is yes, then yes, we'll put it out there. There's certainly some of the older stuff. It's you listen to it and you think that doesn't sound quite as modern nowadays as it did back then. But that's always going to be the way with music, isn't it? But I think it's always, as long as you feel proud of that output, I think that's the key benchmark we're looking for.
But what about tracks that haven't seen the light of day in the public domain? What about those that you've arranged those 7 parts, you've sat down, you've sung it once through and went, this doesn't work for us?
I actually, Jim, I don't know if there are any of those in hiding. At least I don't have access to them if there are.
Yes.
I mean, it's certainly the sort of thing that's going to happen, isn't it? We'll try something and go, you know what, this isn't right for this year. But, we revisit it and we say, okay, what would take this to something we do love? But we tend not to start a piece of music until we're convinced it's the right move. Maybe that's overly cautious, perhaps. One day, one of the members of the group will say, oh, by the way, here's the 400,000 tracks that have never seen the light of day, and it'll come as a big surprise to me. But
yeah, for sure. Now, we have to touch on 5-time Grammy winners yourselves. So what's it like being nominated and subsequently winning a Grammy, and 5 times now?
Well, I mean, I think this is where I have to come clean. I've only joined the group in the last 3 years, and we've not had a Grammy in those last 3 years because there's been this big thing going around the world that sort of put a bit of a stop to music, which I won't mention by name. I would love to think we're on the cards for something coming up. I mean, speaking to some of the earlier members and knowing people that have been in that world, it is just amazing. And I think those Grammys, certainly, that very, very first Grammy back in the 60s, 70s, when Ward, our founder, first started the group, I think that was such an innovative way of looking at vocal music that just had never been done. And I think that's really what informs what we do now is, granted, we're not Grammy chasing. I wouldn't say that much, but as long as we're trying to create something innovative, we're trying to see, okay, how far can we push the human voice? So one of the things is my main job is the vocal drums. I'm the beatboxer and baritone. Is what's the next push? Is it some live technical effects that we use? We use a lot of live looping. If you've seen Ed Sheeran, you'll see that kind of thing. It's always thinking, what's the next step? So, maybe that's when we get the next one, is when we find the next big thing. Sadly, I've not been into that award ceremony yet. I'll add.
Yeah, for sure. Now, looking to the future, what plans have the Swingles got? Because I know you've got some live dates coming up as well. So, what's coming up for you?
We have indeed. We've got lots of touring around the world coming up. You can see all of those dates on our website. But the big thing that we are very excited about at the moment is our little mini festival. It's on the 5th and 6th of May. It's in London at Wilton's Music Hall. It's about 10 minutes walk from the Tower of London, so you can get your tourist fix in if you're coming in from outside of London. It's a little mini festival. It's going to be all of our a cappella favourites. It's going to be some of our new stuff, our original stuff, some of the absolute Swingles favourites that people will recognise. We've got guest performances from the Ayub sisters, from Choir Co. We'll have workshops. So if you've ever thought, I'd quite like to try some of this a cappella stuff, I'd want to get involved in that, we'll be doing that both days. We've got pop-up performances, and then, of course, the important bit, there is a bar for the after party at the end, which we hope to see everyone at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jamie, it's been a pleasure having a chat with you.
Thank you so much for having us on.